Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Parahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Transcendental Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Gaur Premanande. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Srila Prabhupada lilamrta, Volume 4 by His Holiness Swatsvarup Maharaj. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwapana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Ivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to read a section first which joins the last two readings so that we can navigate where we are, and then just give a brief summary of what was discussed in the last reading before we continue with today's reading. So Srila Prabhupada, he was staying with the Beatles, George and John and Yoko, at Tittenhurst Estates, and every day he would go out for morning walks. And on the morning walks he would speak to his disciples, and on one of the morning walks he was talking about how his uncle used to or he used to be called by different names, and one of the names was Nandu. So he was called Nandu because he was born after the day that Krishna was born. So that's what his uncle would call him. And he also used to be called Govardhan. So Srila Prabhupada actually had many names when he was a child. And he used to be called Kacha by his sisters. And sometimes he would talk about different pastimes and different events that happened when he was a child. And something he brought up twice was that he said, I'm doing the same thing now that I was doing then. In other words, right now, or whatever he was doing at that moment, he was doing as a child. And he said that there was never a time when I didn't know Krishna. And he said, do you understand that? There was never a time I didn't know Krishna. And we can see by reading the whole lilamrta from the very beginning that Srila Prabhupada was always Krishna conscious. And then Srila Prabhupada continued speaking with his disciples, and Ishana asks Srila Prabhupada, how is it that a person coming from such a degraded background like myself can become Krishna conscious? And Srila Prabhupada responds that it's because you are intelligent. So he's making a point, and he says elsewhere that surrendering to Krishna is real intelligence. So anyone who's surrendering to Krishna, who's practicing Krishna consciousness, that person can be considered intelligent. That's real intelligence. And then Ishana's wife, Vibhati, she asks, what is the meaning of spiritual master? That's a very important question. We should try to understand the answer carefully. So Srila Prabhupada says, actually, I am not your spiritual master. He says, the title is simply a formality, and you should think of me as your spiritual father, your eternal father. So actually, as what is the role of a father? Let's just look at the example in the material world. He's taking care of his children without any expectation in return. And it's said that actually the love that a mother has for their child is the most pure kind of love that we can see in the material world, because she doesn't expect anything from her child. And the father is also serving selflessly. He's serving the family, serving his children without expecting anything in return. It's a very selfless service that they're offering for their children. So Srila Prabhupada is calling himself their spiritual father, their eternal spiritual father. Eternally, he is serving his disciples without expecting very much in return. All he's asking is that we follow the principles of devotional service, and that's only for our benefit. Everything he gave us was only for our benefit. He was already Krishna conscious, and it was all for our benefit, what he was doing for us, for his disciples. And he was seeing himself as a servant. We can see that because in one lecture, somebody asks Prabhupada, you probably, or they challenge Srila Prabhupada, they say that, Srila Prabhupada, you probably think you're the highest class of men that can be seen in the world. And he says, no. And he actually starts crying. And he says, no, I'm below all of the other classes because I'm the servant of everyone. He's seeing himself as the servant of everyone. And then they're walking past a tractor on the grounds, and then Kula Shekhar, he says that the tractor is a very wonderful invention, isn't it? And Srila Prabhupada, he says actually the tractor is the downfall of the Indian village system. And then Kula Shekhar asks, why is that? It does the work of 10 men. And Srila Prabhupada gives the answer, why is it that it's the downfall of the original village system? He says because previously the young men of the village would be engaged in plowing the field. Then this tractor came along and did the work of all those young men, and they had nothing to do. So they went to the cities to try and find work, and they fell into illusion. And His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj also speaks about this point that Srila Prabhupada wanted to re-establish the Varnashram system. He wanted to re-establish practically the principles of simple living, higher thinking within an environment that takes care of cows, that takes care of aspects of the Varnashram system, like growing our own food. And as Srila Prabhupada was leaving his body in those last moments, his disciples asked, Srila Prabhupada, do you have any regrets? And he said, no. But then he thought for a while and he said, actually I do have one regret. And that is, I didn't re-establish the Varnashram system. So he said his work was not complete in that sense. That's what he desired. And elsewhere, he was speaking to his disciples in New Vrindavan, and he said, I want to re-establish Varnashram. And his disciples asked, how will you do it, Srila Prabhupada? They were wondering how he would do it, and Prabhupada answered, I will sit here on the ground at New Vrindavan, and I will teach you how to live off of the land. That's what he said. And we can actually see that His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj has taken that to heart, and he has this whole eco-village, Govardhan eco-village, and it's a very wonderful place. I went there twice, and Radhanath Maharaj, when he was in New Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada made a point that, or he instructed his disciples, he said, don't implement tractors and don't build up this place using new technology. Do it the old way. Ask the bulls to come and serve. Ask the devotees to come and serve. Manual labor should be there to build up this New Vrindavan. And at some point, the devotees in New Vrindavan thought they were smart, and they thought, actually, the tractor can work so much faster than the cows and the bulls, so let's just use the tractor. So they didn't follow Srila Prabhupada's instruction, and that whole project started falling apart. And then they realized it's because Prabhupada gave us an instruction, and we didn't follow it. We didn't set that example for the world that he wanted us to set. So then they tried to get back to keeping things simple, but then it was a challenge. And Radhanath Maharaj says they only had one bull, and he was very lazy. And he didn't want to listen, he didn't want to do any work. So every day Radhanath Maharaj would have to preach to him, and he'd say, I know it's not easy being in the body of a bull, and he would tell him about how we're not the body, we're the soul. And eventually the bull would look at him and kind of agree that, okay, I'll do some work today. And at the eco-village right now, they have a lot of bulls, and when I was there was one devotee from New Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada's disciple. He was busy training them. And he told me that these bulls, they're like brahmacharis, and they're actually depressed because they don't have any work to do. They don't have anything to do. They're not doing their service. They want to pull things and carry things. That's what they're meant to do. That's a part of the Varnashram system, and they're not getting to do that. And throughout the whole world, the bulls are not getting to do that. Instead, they're being killed. And that's why we're finding, if we go and visit the cows and the bulls, they're a little bit scared, or they're a little bit aggressive. It's because they're all being killed. But those bulls and those cows who are being taken care of very nicely, they're very sweet and very affectionate. So because of this killing, the whole world is experiencing a karmic reaction because we're killing the cows and bulls. So Varnashram and protecting the cows and bulls and establishing spaces like this is so important, and it meant a lot to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so then Srila Prabhupada, he stops beside a clump of yellowed grass, and he asks, why is this yellow grass different? And no one answered. He said, the other grass is green, but this is yellow. What is the reason? This yellow grass is drying up, Prabhupada explained, because the roots are not attached, therefore it is yellow. Similarly, when we detach ourselves from Krishna, then we will dry up. We detach ourselves from Krishna, we will dry up. And another example is given that if you think about a mango tree, maybe the mangoes are green in the beginning when they're growing, but eventually they will become ripe. So we just have to stay connected, stay on the tree. In the beginning, we might be green mangoes. And I was thinking about this point that, because His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj once said to me that I'm on the transcendental platform, and I was thinking, I have to accept what Guru Maharaj says is true, but I know that I'm affected by the mode's material nature, so how can I be both? That doesn't really make sense. And I was thinking about this for a long time and it didn't make sense. And then I heard it, I was watching Srila Prabhupada Memories, and one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, Bhagavat Prabhu, he was saying to Srila Prabhupada, he actually asked this question to Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, you said that if we're practicing Krishna consciousness, we're on the transcendental platform. So all of us we can be considered on the transcendental platform. But how is it that we're still affected by the modes of material nature? It doesn't make sense. And Prabhupada, he was pleased by that question, and he explained that it's just like when we're on a boat, we know that we're protected from the water, from the wind. We've got that space in which we are facilitating our Krishna consciousness. We know what the process is, we're following, we're practicing. But the boat is still affected by the water, it's still affected by the wind. So if you're standing on the boat, you might just fall over, but you're still on the boat. So we get affected by the modes of material nature, although we're practicing. And what do we have to do to try and transcend that? We have to try and take shelter in the expert boatman, our spiritual masters. If we take shelter of our spiritual masters, learn from him how not to fall over when the wind and the difficult weather comes, then we'll be able to stay steady on our boat. And it will happen at some point if we keep going and keep practicing and keep taking shelter. We're also seeing here how Srila Prabhupada sees Krishna everywhere, and he's always thinking, how can I preach Krishna consciousness to my disciples? How can I share Krishna? Whatever he saw, he's just seeing a clump of yellow grass. When we walk past a clump of yellow grass, we don't even notice that it's there. But Prabhupada saw it and contemplated this to the highest level of Krishna consciousness. How can I preach Krishna consciousness by looking at this clump of yellow grass? This was Srila Prabhupada. Amazing. Yes, and then it's written here, Swatsarup Maharaj, he writes that everywhere the scenery had been beautiful, and everywhere he had instructed his followers in Krishna consciousness. Everywhere. And this is a very sweet point here, that at the beginning of the walk a devotee had picked a rose and handed it to him, and he still held it in his hand with care. And the walk was an hour, but he held the rose for a whole hour, just showing that he really appreciated that rose. He really appreciated it. Whatever his disciples offered to him with love, he appreciated it, even if it wasn't something he needed. I mean, even Krishna, he doesn't need anything from us, but he appreciates when we offer something. And Guru is the same. Even if it's something small like a rose, he appreciated that. Okay. Oh, and then there's a part where Srila Prabhupada is interacting with little Saraswati. She's just a little child, but she had such an intimate relationship with Srila Prabhupada. I was hearing how once he picked her up and he looked at her and he said, "Oh, Saraswati, do you remember me, your old friend?" So we can't understand what that really means, but it implies that Saraswati knew Srila Prabhupada in her previous life. They must have been together. He's calling Saraswati his old... he's saying that he is her old friend. And Prabhupada used to tease her, so he asks her, "Are you old enough to go to Gurukul?" And she says, "No." And he says, "Come here, we're going to stamp on your forehead. We're going to put you in a mailbox and send you to Gurukul." And Saraswati cries, "Malati, I don't want to go." And she hides behind her mother. And then Srila Prabhupada calls Saraswati over and gives her some prasadam. So we can see how expert Srila Prabhupada is in preaching to even a young child. That was expert preaching. He was bringing her closer to Krishna by teasing her. And that's exactly what she needed to develop her affection for Srila Prabhupada and for coming closer to Krishna. He was very expert in preaching to everybody. He knew exactly how to engage everyone in Krishna's service. And then in the last class, we were reading about how Srila Prabhupada would play harmonium, and Yamuna really appreciated his playing, and Srila Prabhupada expressed that his favorite bhajan is Hari Hari Vipale, and there is actually a recording of Yamuna Devi singing this in the same way that Srila Prabhupada would sing it. It's very beautiful the way she sings. If anyone wants me to send that, please let me know. It's just incredibly beautiful how she sings that bhajan. Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And then in last week's class, we were also talking about how Srila Prabhupada, he was being served all these different kinds of American desserts, but he actually just preferred sandesh and all those kinds of sweets that Krishna himself used to appreciate, that Krishna himself appreciates, that he, like the kinds of things he would have with his friends, the cowherd boys. And then we come across a part which explained that although, okay, sorry. And then Srila Prabhupada, he's giving a lot of lectures and a lot of classes in London, but he really wanted a temple to be established because then people would come and hear consistently and that way become Krishna conscious. If they just come once or twice, they'll get benefit from that, but if they could come consistently, then it would mean a greater chance of them surrendering to the movement and mission of Srila Prabhupada. And then at the different programs here, he would dance and chant, and Srila Prabhupada would inspire all of the devotees to dance and chant. Okay, and then moving on now to our reading for today. Just read for a little bit. So, at Tittenhurst, Prabhupada often brought up the moon landing while talking with his disciples. The moon landing was a hoax, he said one evening in his room, for they cannot go to the moon. The moon planet Chandraloka is a residence of the demigods, higher beings than these drunkards and cow-eating slaughterers who are trying to inhabit it. You cannot think this travel is allowed, like when I migrated from India to the US. The moon planet cannot be visited so quickly. It is not possible. And in another lecture, Prabhupada explains that Soma is the god of the moon planet, but he's also the presiding deity of all vegetation. So he makes a point that how can the presiding deity of all vegetation not have vegetation on his own planet, the moon planet? And we know that when they supposedly went to the moon, all they brought back was rocks. They didn't say there was any vegetation there. And Prabhupada explains that we can't just go to the moon planet, just like we can't go to the sun planet. We'll get burnt. We need a specific kind of body to be able to go there. Similarly, we need a specific kind of body to be able to go to the moon planet. We can't think that we can just get into a rocket and go to the moon. No, it doesn't work like that. So Srila Prabhupada says it's a hoax, that they didn't actually go to the moon. And everybody accepted this statement except for Purushottama. So Purushottama was not convinced that they didn't go to the moon. He didn't want to believe that they didn't go because he was American and he was proud that, oh, the Americans have gone to the moon. He identified with being American, so he thought it was a wonderful achievement. And he didn't want to accept the statements of Srila Prabhupada. Detecting Purushottama's dubious mentality, Prabhupada would often joke lightly in Purushottama's presence. Someone would ask a question, "Where is Janaki?" And Prabhupada would reply, "Oh, Janaki has gone to the moon." And then everyone would laugh except for Purushottama. So he would always be joking with Purushottama, she's gone to the moon. The devotees knew of Purushottama's difficulty. He was an American and proud that the Americans were conquering space. So although Purushottama went on with his duties, he became sullen, and Prabhupada noted his lack of enthusiasm. One morning, Purushottama and Yamuna were together with Prabhupada in his room. Purushottama had several days' growth of beard and was wearing the same orange sweater he had slept in, whereas Yamuna was neat and clean. Although she had only 2 simple cotton saris, she would always put on a freshly washed and ironed one, and before going to see Prabhupada, she would always put on a freshly washed and ironed one before going to see Prabhupada. Looking at his 2 servants, Prabhupada said, "Yamuna, you have so many saris. They are all so beautiful." Yamuna looked up at Prabhupada in surprise. "I don't have so many, Srila Prabhupada." "No," he said, "you are wearing a new piece of cloth every day. It's so nice. You're always looking so neat and clean. And your tilak. Purushottama, what do you think? Who do you think has the best tilak?" Purushottama didn't answer. "Beautiful tilak," Prabhupada said, means beautiful person. About 6 o'clock that same evening, Yamuna was cooking puris and potatoes for Prabhupada when she heard him ring the servant's bell. Leaving the ghee on the fire, she ran up to Prabhupada's quarters. He talked with her about the lecture he would give that evening and eventually asked, "When will prasadam be ready? Before the discourse?" "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, Yamuna smelled smoke. "Oh," she gasped, "please excuse me, Prabhupada, I've left some ghee on the fire." Rushing downstairs, she found the kitchen filled with black smoke. She couldn't see the stove. "Purushottama, Purushottama," she cried. Purushottama arrived, and together they groped through the smoke. Somehow Purushottama extinguished the fire before it caused serious damage. Purushottama and Yamuna were covered with soot. Their faces were black, and Purushottama's orange sweater, his robes, and Yamuna's sari were all blackened. Suddenly Prabhupada rang the servant's bell, and they both hurried upstairs to tell him about the fire. When Janaki returned downstairs and saw the mess, she ran upstairs to Prabhupada's room, where Yamuna and Purushottama stood, still covered with soot, before Prabhupada. "What has happened here?" Janaki burst out. Prabhupada looked at her soberly and said, "Today Purushottama has gone to the moon." "What?" Janaki asked. Prabhupada repeated, "Yes, our Purushottama has gone to the moon." "Prabhupada," Purushottama said, "I am a brahmachari. Why are you saying these things?" "Being a brahmachari is no restriction from going to the moon. Anyone can go," Prabhupada said, winking. So Prabhupada is continuing to tease his disciple Purushottama. And then the devotees regularly encountered John and Yoko. Although originally interested in a business relationship, John was inclined towards the devotees, but his friends advised him not to get involved with the Swami and his group, so he remained aloof. So we can see that although he was inclined because he had association with people who weren't, then he also became disinclined. We become like that which we associate ourselves with, says His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. And even when John actually he would chant a lot, he would play the piano and he would sing, and Srila Prabhupada would really appreciate that. But then, as we were also earlier in the reading, we were reading how although John was inclined, he was badly influenced by the association of Yoko. So here he would play piano, and then she would come and say, "Please stop, I have a headache," or she wouldn't want to hear him singing the Mahamantra. So he was badly influenced by association in that sense. But George was different. He was drawn to Prabhupada. When one of the devotees had asked, "Why out of all the Beatles are you the only are only you interested? And George replied, oh, it's my karma. It's one of the things he was saying. It's in his astrological chart, basically, is what he was saying, that he's more inclined than the rest of them were. And then George Harrison, he speaks about Srila Prabhupada, and he explains that although at first he was scared to meet Prabhupada, Prabhupada became like his friend. And that's something that really melts the heart, isn't it? When a really senior, exalted personality becomes a friend to you and cares about you. And many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples actually said the reason they surrendered to Prabhupada was because they felt like Prabhupada was the only one who actually really cared about them. And then George, he says that Prabhupada helped him to realize that there's so many different ways to approach Krishna, just like prasadam. And he says it's kind of a trick, but it's also a blessing, that when we receive prasadam, we feel so grateful and we get to actually experience what it's like to taste the remnants of the Lord. And he was saying there's so many different ways to approach Krishna. And he also said that he realized from Srila Prabhupada that Krishna is not limited. So by reading Prabhupada's books, we can see different pictures to show how Krishna is within, or the expansion of Krishna is within the heart of every living entity, including dogs and cows and human beings. So George was just impressed by this, and he was starting to realize that Krishna is everywhere. And he's within everyone's heart at the same time, that he's a person with a personality. So he was starting to appreciate Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada, he also appreciated George, and he said that he was explaining to George that according to the Bhagavatam, no matter what a person may be materially, if he is a non-devotee and never utters the holy name of God, he cannot possess any good qualities. So that's from Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18. There's a text which says that a person who is practicing the process of Krishna consciousness, they possess all the good qualities of the demigods, whereas a person who is just engrossed in material life, they have no good qualities at all. Although they might be materially qualified to perform different things in the world, they can't possess any good qualities in a lasting way. And Srila Prabhupada appreciated that George liked to chant, and he was encouraging him to keep chanting and to keep writing music. So George, at some point, he asked Srila Prabhupada if he should stop making music and move into the temple and shave his hair. And Prabhupada actually said, no, don't do that. Continue as you are. So he knew how to engage everyone according to their nature. And something I learned from His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj when he was going through the first canto of Bhagavatam is that when we apply our skills and talents in Krishna's service, that is Hari Kirtan. So in other words, when we are making music for Krishna, when we are painting, when we're drawing, or when we're singing for the Lord, whatever it is we're doing, when we're applying our skills in His service, that is Hari Kirtan. Even if you're an engineer, actually, whatever it is you're doing, if you're engaging that in Krishna's service, then that is Hari Kirtan. So that's Yukta Vairagya, utilizing whatever we've got in the service of the Lord, and then it becomes transcendental, it's not mundane. And so George was encouraged to keep doing that, to keep making music. And then he also, Prabhupada, he says, because you are serving Krishna through your music, that makes all the difference. And he wanted that this music become popular all over the world. And because George was famous, a lot of people would hear his music and they would appreciate the Maha Mantra, and they might surrender, they might become Krishna conscious. because in Bhagavatam, Canto 3, it says, whatever great man performs, all the world pursues. So because George was considered a great man in the eyes of the world, the whole world would follow in his footsteps if he chanted the Mahamantra and inspired others to do so. So we'll end off just by reading a small section. So George, he says, he was always pleased with me because anything I did was a help. I mean, not just to the Krishna temple as such, but just to anything spiritual that I did, either through songs or whatever, it pleased him. He was just always very friendly. He was always chanting, and at times he said that to me, just to keep chanting all the time or as much as possible. I think once you do that, you realize the chanting is of benefit. There are some gurus who go around making out that they are it, but Prabhupada was saying, I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, which is really what it is, you know. He wasn't saying, I am the greatest and I am God and all that. With him it was only in the context of being a servant, and I like that a lot. I think it's part of the spiritual thing. The more they know, then the more they actually know that they are the servant. And the less they know, the more they think they are actually God's gift to mankind. So the more he's bringing up this point, the more self-realized we become, the more we see that we're actually just a part and parcel of Krishna. We're just servants of Krishna. We're servants of Krishna's devotees. That's our position. So although he was obviously a very powerful individual, very spiritually advanced, he always retained that humbleness. And I think that is one of the most important things, because you learn more than all the words he says. You learn really from the example of how he lives and what he does. Okay, we'll stop there. Are there any comments, questions, corrections? Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So as Prabhupada, he would see the dry grass and he would, sort of relate it to Krishna consciousness. You said that, if we attach ourselves to Krishna, then we will be Krishna conscious. But if we detach ourselves, like the dry grass was detached from the ground, so it dried up. So Prabhupada linked it to Krishna consciousness. So we can also do that in our lives, look around us and see, how we can link different things to Krishna consciousness. Like Prabhupada was walking on the beach and he saw the dog, a stray dog, and then he said, what's the difference between that dog and the man that was holding the dog on the leash? And he says, the dog on the leash has a master and he's healthy, but the stray dog, he doesn't have a master and he is, just scrounging around for food. So in this way, he pertained everything to Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Do you think we could call that an udipan? Maybe it's not exactly an udipan, like when we see something in the world and we remember Krishna, but it's kind of an udipan, isn't it? It's not different from an udipan. Is that acceptable? We can say that. Okay. Anyone else has anything? Okay. Srila Prabhupada lilamrta ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.